there's an important part to gain the influence or to gain the trust of that person you're talking to, or gain the feeling that they know you care about them,
is we shift who we are to try to impress them, and versus saying, how can I like them?
We know all real estate agents want to acquire clients consistently so that they can grow their business and income for that great lifestyle. This broadcast brings you the best and top people in the industry to support that quest. This is Dave Fanale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and Align, your premier real estate solution. And here we are. We're about to begin this broadcast. This is number 388. And my guest today is like a guy who's been, for nearly 30 years, figuring out why some people walk into a room, everybody listens, and others can't get even their dogs to pay attention. You know, you talk about where neuroscience meets real world influence. And selfishly for me, René, it's like, okay, so, you know, how do we get from one point to the next in a listing presentation? How do we get from one point to the next when we're on stage or when we're trying to make a point to people, going from just individuals on over to, you know, that crowd, that bunch of people, or even working with several people I'm mentoring, you know? So selfishly for today, I'm really interested in how to take all the neuroscience and all the stuff to influence people that I talk with, where I can help people learn to get over, let's say, the fear of making calls, to have that influence when you walk into a room, to really make a good impression of yourself. And how does it work? I mean, I've seen a lot of your stuff, and to me, it's like, oh shit, this might be it for me, right? So anyway, I mean, you've come a long way, have learned a lot, and have really developed your process and everything. And you know, I know you through EXP, the company EXP Realty, and you know, you're just like you just amaze me when I see stuff. And I've started reading your book, Amplify, and I'm really excited. So thank you so much for being on that long-winded intro, René Rodriguez. Thanks for being here, man.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I think there's a lot of really good questions in that. I think when we think about influences, there's so many different ways of thinking about it. And there's nonverbal influence. There's, you know, influence that speaks before we do. There's physical presence, voice intonations. There's how we dress. There's accomplishments. There's how we structure our language. There's so many different things. There's what people say about us. There's our brand. All of it equates to influence. And, you know, a lot of times you're saying, how do I move from a one-on-one listing to an audience? Well, I think people underestimate the value of the one-on-one. We all want to be in front of a room, which is great, by the way. That's how you leverage your presence. You compress your time. You know, instead of 100 one-on-one meetings, you can have a meeting with 100 in 1 hour. So there's a huge value to that, and something that I think everybody should start striving to. But don't worry about the 100 rooms, the 1,000 room meetings. Worry about the 1-on-2s, 1-on-10s, 1-on-5s. If you go from one-on-one meetings to 1-on-2, you've 100% doubled your effectiveness. If you go to 1-on-10, that's 10x what you've already done. And so don't lose sight of that. You know, social media, people say, oh, I have 500 followers. That's 500 people. And most likely those are people that have a vested interest in you and they know who you are. You need to serve those people. And so there's sort of the misnomer of wanting to jump to that, but then there's, how do I get there? And so, I mean, I'll let you decide which do you want to talk about the physical presence of influence? Do you want to talk about the voice inflections? Do you want to talk about the story structure? Do you want to talk about how we speak? You know, how do you want to address it? There's so many different ways to do it.
You know, when we talk about, I think you made a really great point about when we talk about from 1 to 1, 1 to 2, 1 to 10, because in my realm of working with real estate agents and also being out there in a production level as well, it's important for me to gain influence. And as me, I'm talking about every real estate agent out there. Okay. So when I say that, that's what I mean, right? So there's an important part to gain the influence or to gain the trust of that person you're talking to, or gain the feeling that they know you care about them. The old expression of they won't care about you till they know that you care about them. And it's all about, you know, how to speak and be heard and get trusted quickly. Can we start there?
Yeah. Well, I think, like you said, it's the phrase, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That cliche is so strong because it illustrates a sequence. I can talk about my knowledge all day long, but if I don't think that you care about me, like, that means I can't trust you. And if I can't trust you, I inherently can't trust what you say. So your
Right.
knowledge is nullified. It doesn't matter. And so there's a sequence to that. I have to build connection before I can build trust. And then I can have to build trust before I can impart knowledge onto you. And before I can impart knowledge or emotion onto you, I won't be able to move you, which is really the essence of influence. And so there's a sequence that we just identified there through that old cliche. And so when we think about that is how do you, and again, this goes back to so many different ways of looking at it. If you watch a rock star or a movie star on stage and they come down, they have influence because they have leverage. And that leverage is because I put you in a pedestal and I hold you in this sort of this rock star status or as a speaker, whatever. Well, they've earned that because of the pre-selection process. That's an old anthropological piece. If somebody is of high value and everyone's looking at them, that must mean that they were pre-selected. There's something I don't know, but everybody else seems to know this. So the value and the status goes up, and therefore their influence goes up. But that's not how most of us are going to achieve influence. We have to achieve influence in a one-on-one basis with people that don't know us and don't really trust us, don't really care who we are, and they just met us. How do we do that? That to me is way more interesting because,
Right.
and I think you just said it. If I am going to influence you, I was literally on a sales call yesterday. Someone was very excited to talk, and this was number one producer in their industry, number one female producer in the industry. And they're like, okay, we're going to start this pretty large investment. And they go, let me get my husband. He helps run the business. He gets on. He goes, remember I talked to you about Renee? No. And he's sitting down on Zoom. He goes, yep, no idea who you're talking about. And he sits down and looks at me. He goes, yeah, sorry, I'm a little blindsided here. And I think we've all been in that scenario where someone's
Yeah.
excited. They know they're just about to get sold. And my heart went out to this guy because I know how excited she was. And I know his role is like, is she being sold on something again? And so I said, hey, number one, first and foremost, I know you're being blindsided. So here to have any questions. Here's a little bit about my background. Let me bring you up to speed on what happened. This is what I think happened. And by the way, I do want to tell you that you guys have already achieved number one position in your industry without me. So you are clearly doing a lot of things right. And so I think what she's referring to is what does that next level look like? And let me tell you a little bit about me. So me acknowledging that there was already achievement there was one way to reduce that resistance to the idea of being sold, which is such a critical component to being able to sell and impart an idea. And by the way, it was done authentically. I really understand that position. And I value that person in my life, the person that is holding off on my impulses, the one that's making me slow down and regulating just a little bit before I run off and I spend money. And so I also genuinely valued the position that he was playing in. But I also knew if she has someone like that in her life, he would be a major asset in the project that we're looking at doing. And so for me, this was a relationship building opportunity. Of course, I had to talk about a little bit of what I did. And in the articulation of that, after about 10 minutes, he's like, okay, well, clearly, Renee, I actually like you. You seem to really know what you're doing. Obviously, this is all new. We talked about it. And so the whole process sort of went that way. But I knew there was a sequence of that first that I have to assume people don't know me. How do I build trust quickly? If that makes sense.
So, yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. So building trust quickly. So a lot of things we're talking about in the realm of real estate, right? So we talk about asking questions, and everybody uses this phrase. Well, this is a discovery call. We want to discover about you, right? And to me, I mean, when I first heard that many years ago, it kind of made sense. It was a new thing. Now it's all you hear when you start talking to, whether it's sellers or buyers or even with coaches and stuff to get a discovery call. There's so many people out there trying to sell different products and different coaching things, and that's really cool. And it's a discovery call. So when you start when there was information that you had to give out about yourself, it would seem that it was a different approach. It was about you because he needed to know about you to have trust in
Right.
you on the call. How is that approach different from what I'm talking about?
Well, I think, for me, I had established, I had written this book. I actually happened to have my book on hand. So I just said, hey, I wrote this book, best-selling, Wall Street Journal. And I go, but none of that really matters. I go, what it sounds like is, what are your goals and objectives? So if I'm in real estate and I'm saying, look, I've been in real estate X amount of years, I've done X amount of transactions, I've helped people from all over, but honestly, none of that matters. The only thing that matters are what are your goals? Because if I can't take all that expertise and help you achieve what your goal is, maybe it's to be an investor, maybe it's to, maximize your equity, whatever it is, what good is it? So if you don't mind, may I ask what your goals are? And now I take that moment to really, truly understand what their goals are. And listening is one of the most powerful ways, and it sounds so cliche and so simple, to truly build trust and safety with somebody. When I talk about safety, I'm talking about psychological safety. Is my money at risk? Are you going to humiliate me? Am I making a poor decision? But if I can feel heard, then at least I know this person knows what my goals are. And if this person knows what my goals are, then the advice to get me to those goals is a lot clearer. There's a clearer line of sight to being able to achieve those. And so for me, it began with listening. And if I'm in real estate, it would begin with listening. Like I would have some basics. Yeah, yes, of course I've done this. I would show up, by the way, looking professional. I would be on time. I would hopefully this came through some sort of referral. And, you can drop a couple of the little hints that saying, I've done this for this one, but you know what, honestly, and I'd set that stuff aside. We were the number one team. We were this, we've achieved this, we've done that. But I said, honestly, and I would just physically shove it aside. None of that matters if I can't help you get to your goals. So if you don't mind, I would love to know, why are you here? You have so many choices as to do this. I'm honored that you're here to talk to me. I would love to know what you're looking to achieve. And that right there, it's like, yes, you dropped all that information, but then you moved it aside and you went to them. So there's this little inherent piece. I need to know that I'm talking to somebody credible so I can answer that quickly. But then more importantly, I want to build a relationship. That's more important to me.
Most important thing is building a relationship, and listening is, I completely agree with that. And there's methodologies that we've all been taught. A lot of us use it, a lot of us don't, ask a question, repeat the answer, approve of the answer, and then go to your next question. Is that the same process? Is that still a good process to use?
I love that process. Yeah. And the delivery matters. If somebody says, if I were to go to you, so you're asking me, does, ask a question, listen to their answer, repeat back to ensure that you're understanding. That's a really strong feedback loop to really show a very specific part of their brain called the limbic system that they've been heard. The limbic system is where emotions, values, and gateway to long-term memory reside. And it's part of the brain that joins churches, joins teams. It's the one that makes the buying decisions. And it's the one that really uses all the emotion to drive towards something. And that is what we call an open loop system. An open loop system sends out a message to the world, waits for a message to come back to actually be affected by that message. It's a mammalian response versus what we would call a reptilian response, which is a lower functioning part of our brain in the basal ganglia, which is a closed loop system. Our breathing, our heart rate, our digestion, all of those things. We don't need outside input to breathe, digest our food, to circulate blood. It just happens automatically. And so, but any sort of relationship, that's what mammals do. Reptiles don't bond. They're solo. Thank God. Imagine a bunch of lizards getting together working as a team. Yeah. Crocodiles working as a team. That would be scary. Thank God.
I never thought about that. That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but mammals, dogs, they're in packs and they work together. There's a sense of emotion. And so we have those same parts of the brain that we share. And so if I can feed back what I'm hearing, it's the only true test, the truth test to say, have I heard you? And if you can say, now, did I miss anything? You're giving the power back to that individual to clarify if there's anything that was missing. And so it's really truly saying, instead of saying, here's what I heard, here's what I'm going on. So this is my suggestion. Well, what if what I heard was wrong and I didn't give them a chance to clarify? Right. And sometimes when we communicate things, we say things, they heard it right, but that's not what I meant to say. And so I'll kind of try to reel it back in and say, well, no, actually I said that, but this is what I really meant.
So is there I see one of the problems, and this is really basic stuff, man. But I think it's really important about the listening part and this, what I call active listening, which I just explained and you talked about. There's a lot of people that will do that, but they'll sound so salesy. They'll sound to a point sometimes creepy, right? And how does one, okay, so as a coach, a mentor, I want to be able to give that to the person I'm working with and say, okay, so you did everything correctly, but I want you to be able to turn that potential client to know that you really do care about them in the manner that you're saying. Is it body language? Is your body language over the phone? Is it tonality? Is it just not sounding like a salesperson because it says that on your license?
Well, I think, there's things that can sound salesy. It comes down to two different pieces of what I've come to learn. One is timing, and the second one is delivery and how we sound. And the timing is, let's say, for example, I tell a vulnerable story and I finish that story. So, so that's how I grew up as a kid. So when I got into car sales, I realized that story really made me better. And so it's like, it's a little bit too quick of a jump. It felt like you use the story to get me in the door to then manipulate me. It didn't feel right. And so there's a timing of which, if someone, if they share with you a challenge, you go, well, we have a solution just for that. Timing again is an issue versus saying, okay, so tell me more about that issue. Interesting. Okay. And you create some distance between that and then the solution because you really wanted to listen for more information. But then there's tonality. If I sound, because I sound scripted. Yeah, you don't want to sound scripted.
Right.
But in the beginning, you probably will.
Right.
Just like anything, but over time, you learn to make a bit of language your own. And if I sound scripted, I might even say, guys, I'm just going to read this because I really found a good way of saying this. And that's the beauty of a script, is that it's a perfectly structured dialogue to communicate a message in a way that works. Why wouldn't I leverage that? And so for me, the transparency, and this is what I think is possible in days like today, where if you're transparent, say, I know that, guys, I actually wrote down a script on how I wanted to say this. I've been working on this for a long time, but it's also the easiest way to understand it. So if you don't mind, I'll just read this. And you can even say, I've been actually practicing my script on this one. And when you're honest that way, people will trust you instead of trying to hide the fact that it's scripted.
Yeah, it's okay. So to talk about this broadcast and how I do this, I'm going to tell you that 9 times out of 10, I am always nervous with the person that's coming on, that I want to make sure that I have the information, that I know them. And the same goes with you in today's broadcast, is a bit nervous about the subject matter, a bit nervous about, I hold you in very high esteem from what I've read and what I've seen. So, there's a nervousness to it. And the same thing can be said, maybe a little bit different, for, making that phone call to that for sale by owner, or getting it in front of that seller, So for me, it's like, okay, so I have notes, I have all different things that I've done to prepare for our conversation today. And it's almost like now I'm getting that little bit more comfortable and getting away from it. So personally, from one-to-one, from me to you, but it's also the same thing from going from a point of, the seller being skeptical of you and the person that you're trying to sell to have them turn from being, skeptical. This is an agent, I want to sell a house on myself. And all of a sudden now you want to turn them to, I want you to work with me. How do here's the transition there, René.
So the nervousness and that comes from talking to, whatever, the girl that you like, the boy that you like, the cold call, the podcast guest, whatever it is, comes from an internal decision. And that internal decision is, I hope they like me. If I'm talking to a girl and I'm nervous, because I hope they like me. If I'm cold calling, gosh, I hope they like me. And so then what ends up happening is that we shift who we are to try to impress them. And versus saying, how can I like them? Stop trying to get people to like you and start proactively trying to like them. So for me, if I'm meeting somebody that I look up to, I'm just like, you know what? I've been a big fan. I said, I really loved when you did this. How did you come up with that? And I turn this into a curiosity. And when I meet like, an athlete or a celebrity or a chef that I really love, whatever it is, instead of me trying to get them to like me, I'm going so deep and trying to understand them and where they came from, how their thinking was, how did they come up with an idea like that? I remember one of my really close friends is, 80 million records sold, this guy, and has done some of the greatest things ever. And I walked up to him, I said, how does it feel to know that you have shifted an entire generation's music? And he looked at me, he's like, man, nobody's ever put it that way before. He goes, that's really cool. I think that's phenomenal. Your music has changed the mood of millions of people the moment it comes on. I go, that's a pretty magical touch. And he's like, man, and so we just built a friendship on that. And the idea of that is, if you're calling somebody, from a cold call perspective or a listing, it's like, God, I hope they like me. Here's what I've done. It's just start really putting our credentials out there versus taking an interest in them. Say, hey, you call that cold call, say, hey, I know that you're getting a lot of phone calls like this. I go, but I'm always really curious as to what horror stories you have been through. How's the process going for you? It can be an exciting one. It can be a scary one. How are you experiencing this process? How are you holding up? And taking a real interest in that. If I meet anybody from Israel or Palestine, my question right now is, how's your family?
Yeah.
Anyone from the Ukraine, how's your family? From Russia, how's your family? I don't care what side you're on. People are suffering. And when you can back away from this and say, you know what, I'm going to take an interest in that. Uber drivers to people I meet, and they stop. I'll talk. There's one CEO, $2 billion company. He owns the company, private. And I said, before we get started, how's your family? And he just stops and he looks at me, he goes, his shoulders drop, and he goes, it's a really hard time right now. I have family members right now that are in bomb shelters, and we call every day, we talk, I think they're going to be okay. And it was just like this real conversation. And I was genuinely interested because I don't care what you believe. These are humans that are having a hard time. And so then, now that's a drastic example, but somebody going through a real estate and buying something, it's either exciting or highly stressful. How are you doing? And take a true interest in that moment. And if you can find the authenticity for it, because then they might go, you know what, we're really happy. We found an amazing agent. You know what? Awesome. Usually I call these people because they're having a hard time. You seem like you've achieved the goal of finding a great agent. What is it about this agent that you found that you've really helped? Because maybe I can learn something from them. That's an honest thing. Because you know what? I want people saying that if they work with me, if I'm an agent, to saying the same thing about me. So clearly I could learn something from this person. And maybe, do you mind if who's this agent's name? Because I'd love to refer them. Because I'm looking for people that I can refer business to. Oh, it's, Jody Smith, whatever it is. Awesome. I look up Jody Smith and say, Jody Smith, my name is Renee with Acme Realty. And I called on your client. I wanted to tell you this. And you know what they told me? That they are ridiculously satisfied with you. So I just wanted to tell you, as a quote unquote competitor, that you were doing an amazing job. And do you know, imagine the response that you'd get from that.
Yeah.
And the reason people say, well, that's not gonna make you money. No, but it gets my mindset in the right place when I call. So I'll make 50 times more calls than you will, because I know that I'm honestly calling to build relationships and find people that I like, versus just trying to get people to like me. Then I have to deal with the thought of potential rejection. If I'm trying to get you to like me and you don't, I'm rejected. If I'm trying to like you and I found out that I really don't like you, there's nothing to reject because I haven't offered anything. I get to be the one to walk away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, there are also a lot of times where, we talk about scripts. We're going through that and storytelling and with people and being appreciative of what you know about others and what you heard about them. It's the same thing with you, with me. I mean, and the same thing with, others. I mean, we just came back from a great event last week where we listened to others and what they did. And a lot of the people I'm very blessed to know personally that were on stage, and knowing their stories as well. So knowing stories and appreciating the stories are really, really important. So when we're having conversations, and then, there's a time and a place to switch the conversation from conversation to sales, or does it just roll into it?
Well, that's the piece, is if I'm going in to try to get you to like me, it's going to be hard. But if I find the fact that I like you, and here's the laws of influence. One of the laws of influence says we like people who like us. So if I end up finding, and I take an effort to really like you, odds are you're going to like me in return. And what I tell people, you know what's really easy to do with two people that like each other? Business. And at the end of this really cool, organic, honest conversation, you say, you know what, Dave, I really enjoyed this conversation. I would love to find a way to do business. How do we make that happen? I just acknowledge what it is. I really have enjoyed this conversation. I want to do business. I'm very explicit about the fact that I want to do business with people that I enjoy, because there's so many that I don't. And when I find one that I enjoy, I like to lock in. How can we go serve our customers?
That's very cool. I really love that. I mean, just with the work I did to learn a little bit about you, René Rodriguez, I said, wow, that could be a turning point for me. Look, I've been around a long time, and I still have insecurities. I still have fears about different things in my business, and I don't know, Ray. When it comes to that, is it what's in the back of my head? Is it past? Is Is it just learning how to communicate better? Is it how I present myself? Now we talk about body language and we talk about being dressed for it, right? Where does that all come from, and how does that all change?
In what sense? Because I love your
So,
question, but I think there's so much more to your question. I want to make sure that I understand it.
so there's when there's a lot of people that really want to do something, they really want to achieve in their business. Let's use real estate agents. Of course, that's why we're here. They really want to succeed, and they want to go through all the things. And basically look at the metrics. You got to make the phone calls, have the conversations. Let's just leave it at the word conversations. And there's something stopping them from doing it. And I've asked this question so many times on this broadcast for different reasons, different applications, but what's the switch? Is there a switch? Is there a process that one can go through to say, okay, I know how to do all this stuff. I'm really good at this. I'm really good at listing properties. I'm really good at marketing them. I just need to people will say, I just want to get in front of the people. Just get me in front of them and I'm going to be fine. But there's a piece missing, where there's like this vast opening where you don't want to step into it for fear you'll fall down. And people don't get there, and they never get there. Is there a process where they can go through, or is it just like saying, I'm not going to do this shit anymore. I'm just going to move forward and do it. And I don't care what anybody says.
Well, that always works too, right? It does work. For me, I think every good sales professional goes through an event, an experience, and it's their own way. I'll share one that my friend went through, and his name was Scott Hardy, one of the best salespeople I ever met. And
you're muted.
He was selling long-term healthcare insurance, and he was doing a dinner with his best friend and his family. And his best friend and family were talking about how the father was just diagnosed with this illness, and it was going to be a long process. They didn't know how they're going to afford it and everything. And of course, the moment Scott heard that, his heart sunk to the floor because he knew it was going to happen next. Sure enough, his friend goes, "Wait, Mom, Dad, like Scott has a product that solves this. And he's got something." And of course, record scratches, the whole family turns and looks at Scott and says, "Scott, what do you got for us?" And he goes, "I had to tell them that I couldn't help him because my policy would have had to been in place prior to diagnosis." And he goes, "That wasn't even the hard part. The hard part was what the father said next." The dad looks at him, takes a moment, and says, "So were you waiting for something like this to happen before you told me about it?" Yeah. It was in that moment that he realized if he didn't believe in what he was selling enough to tell his friends and family about it, that he was in the wrong industry. And so if you're in real estate and you know that there are people that in this industry that shouldn't be in there, people that are just taking their customers for a ride, getting the easy commissions, not doing much, just order taking and being around for a commission, not giving the advice that they should, and you're not out there and you believe that you're good at this and you're doing good for the customer, then you have an obligation to be known as at least an option. If you knew that your kids were going to be doing something, whether it was drugs, illegal, whatever it was, and you didn't have the skill set to communicate why they need to listen to you, you might want to start there. Same is true in real estate. If you have something really good to offer and people don't even know you exist, they don't even know that you can be part of the process, then you need to do everything you can to learn how to do that, because that drive to think, wow, hold on a second, do I really believe in this enough to tell the people that I love most about it? And if you believe in what you do, that's an easy decision, an easy question.
So is it influence? Is it charisma? Is it just being comfortable?
I think all comfortable is not one of the measures that I use ever. Because comfortable is an outcome of doing something a long time. And I also know people that are comfortable being on stage, but offering no value. And so comfort is never really a measure for me. And some of the most important things in my life are never comfortable, right? They're usually uncomfortable. Right. And then charisma, I think, always helps. Influence is the outcome. But to me, there's a mindset internally, a belief system, a philosophy. And I believe that true influence starts from within. What do I believe? Do I really believe that that I need to get my message out, that I'm really truly out there helping people, or do I believe that this is just about a commission? Well, in sales, you're going to transfer a feeling of some sort. It's just transference of feeling. Question is, what feeling are you going to transfer? Is it a feeling of conviction, or is it a feeling of doubt? Is it, do you have commission breath or dollar signs in your eyes? What is it that you have? Why are you truly there? And so look at that internally first, and you have to overcome those objections internally before you can do them externally. And so for me, is having the right philosophy, having the right mindset, and then showing up in a way that truly serves people. And then the scripting comes, and it's really powerful.
So I know I'm talking really basic stuff here, and you said something that made me think about people I work with every day. And there are some, not everybody, but a couple that I work with that, they really have the pressure on them to make money, and they're in real estate as their vehicle to make that money. And the pressure on them is, I got to get a deal. I got to get a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear it in their voice. Although don't have commission breath, but you can hear the desperation almost in their voice. Yep. And we always say, like I said, they're not going to care about you till they know you care about them. And you always say, well, don't think about the money, so on and so forth. That's kind of really hard for a lot of people, don't you think, René? And how do you get through that?
Well, it's too late to think about the money at the time of the deal, period. You need to think about the money at the time of prospecting. You need to think about the money at the time of making the phone calls, showing up at the networking events. That's when you think about it. So that solution should have been solved prior. If you're at a place where you're desperate, that's not that client's problem. That is your problem. You didn't do the right things early enough. You didn't put the time in to make the phone calls and to prospect, to generate the leads and set the appointments early on. And so there's a hard truth, but you have to remember it. And if you take ownership in that, where you find yourself in this position where you got to close this deal, you go, okay, you know what? That is not this customer's fault. That is not their fault. I'm going to give them the best service I can. I'm going to do everything that I can. And yes, I'm probably going to push a little bit more, which is okay. If you believe in something, care enough to be unreasonable. I'll say it again, care enough to be unreasonable. But remember that problem is solved during all the unsexy work, all the times you're dialing the phone, meeting at the coffees, doing the things that just aren't seen. I was telling my son this, who's actually working with me now, and he finally gets it. He goes, Dad, every deal you've closed was at one point a lead, wasn't it? I said, yes. And prior to becoming it was a lead, it was some random conversation where we showed up at an event and there was no business being transacted, but we showed up at the right place at the right time to add value for someone to express their interest enough to exchange a number. And then I had to get in front of them to present some sort of value. And then if I did that, then it would lead to a deal. But every deal that we have at some point was somebody who wasn't interested, that became interested and became a lead. And we walked them through that process. And so I have to find value and passion around that lead generation process and the prospecting process early on, so I never find myself in that position.
So the word desperation that I used needs to be in the process, not the conversation. So basically what I mean, but I know you said this, I'm just going to say it in a different way just to make sure I completely understand, is that your desperation, your hard work, your say, I need this deal is in the actual preparation, the actual process of going in, making the calls, being at the events, doing what you have to do. And when the conversation starts, it's not about what you need, it's about what they need.
Yes.
And then that in turn will close the deal.
You got it. And if I can truly be there to serve, honestly, almost all the answers in life are solved through service. It's just, and it's the old cliche, even Zig Ziglar said, you can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. I mean, that's a service message. That's a karma message. Give out to the world that which you want in return, and do it without expectation. But then, I know that doesn't give you a sales strategy. I get that. So let's dive into that for a minute. But it does. The best sales message is to go in with the right mindset. You have to have the right mindset. And if you have just the closer's mindset that you close, well, hold on. You got to build value first. Because then if you can build value, it's easy to close. And the better your presentation is, the more a formality the close is. I tell you at the end of my presentation, okay, where do I sign? How do I pay you? I didn't have to ask because the presentation was so good. All right, how do we get started? It's right here. Do you want me to? Yeah, perfect. What card do you want to use? Perfect, this one. It's because the presentation was good. And the presentation was good because I listened. And I listened to find something I could solve. And I connected my solution with their need. And I showed that it was simple. They bought off on me, They bought off on my company. They bought off on the solution. The investment made sense, and the timing was now. Those things all come together to really make the sale happen.
So we've talked about a lot of different things about influence, and we've been really kind of basic, which is really great, because this is what a lot of people really need, because nobody really talks about it that much. I mean, yes, in my meetings, one-on-ones and one to few, it's important to talk about this. And you've got a couple of things that really help people. First of all, you have your book, and then you have a program coming up in a couple of weeks called $1 Million Communication Code. Can you talk about what you've got going on November 11th, and we can help people get there? Because I really want to talk about what you're going to go through on that. It's a 90-minute session that you're doing, which is I'm really interested in. I've already signed up for it. So
cool. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a sequence and a way to communicate that gets results that are exponential compared to others. Period. There's some people, everybody communicates, but why do some other people communicate so much better, so much more effectively, get people to follow and listen? There is a difference. And when you understand the neuroscience as to why, and you couple that with skill sets, and you couple that together with practical and tactical techniques, that is where the difference is made. And so when we talk about the $1 million piece, there's a reason why some people are earning more than others. And it's not an accident. And so when we teach it and break it down in a usable format, that's where the magic really starts happening.
So as far as things, look, here's the thing, right? When I started learning about you for today, I also simultaneously started reading a book by one of your clients, by the way. And one of the things who I used to coach with, and I realized some things that really intrigued me about her as well as you, is the way that she was communicating as she wrote this book that I absolutely love. And it's like, some people
who are we talking about?
We're talking about Michelle Berman.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Right. So the Black Line.
Yep.
So she's an amazing human being. I worked with her a couple of years ago. And one of the things about her book, with the way she came through it, she was very adamant about this is the process to do it. And some people have come, some people have gone, and some people have gotten away from stuff that worked. It's not what she said. It's the process that she put it through. And I linked her to you, and she started working with you after we coached together. And it was really important to me and made me learn more about her. And I had learned a lot about her. I consider her a friend. How is that process of, I'm getting a little jumbled here, and I apologize for that. The way the process is of her communication style in the book to communicate better, and how do we get there? I mean, is there a method to get there? Is it just learning different things and working with you?
Well, that's the process that we teach is called the Amplify formula. It's in the book. It's what we're going to talk about in the $1 Million Code. And when we look at, again, I started off by saying there's a sequence to understanding life. And when we understand how we construct reality through frames of reference or framing, and we understand how to control or claim the frame through storytelling, now all of a sudden, if I can tell the best story, I can, in essence, control the frame by which you see the world. If I control the frame by which you see the world, I can, in essence, control how you perceive the world, which becomes a reality. And so storytelling is a very powerful piece. And so being able to understand framing through story, framing through use of props and metaphors, all of those different pieces all contribute to someone's understanding of the message being delivered. And then at the end of that message being delivered, we add what's called a tie down, which is, so what this means to you is the meaning behind this, what the value is to you. And so the method is frame, message, tie down. If we start with the message, we're in trouble because it forces people to create their own frames to understand what it is. That's why Uber was in Netflix were so like, what in hell is this when it first came out? I go to an app and some random person picks me up. That doesn't sound okay. Netflix, I can choose what I want to watch versus TV Guide. It was disruptive because there was no frame of reference to that. And so a lot of times, if we don't have a frame of reference, they're going to find their own, and they're going to choose something that might be antiquated or might be something that puts you in a bad light. So we start with setting the frame, then we move on to the message, and then we tie it down and make it mean something. That's the sequence.
You know, I there's a lot of things that what you just said and how the sequence works is also limiting prior beliefs to how we want to present a message or a message gets presented to us. I'm going to use eXp Realty as an example for me, my own personal situation. A lot of agents will say that have joined will say that, you know, they heard about it, they didn't think much of it, that won't last. And I remember myself, I could be very honest, I said 10 years ago, that won't last, right? That's not going to, that doesn't have really a game plan that's going to work, at least for me. But then when we most said that, and what happened was we had to see results. We had to see and talk to more people that knew about it before we were open to it. Is that the same thing that we're talking about here as far as telling stories and getting business that way? Or is it just what happens?
It's what happens. It's how the brain works. And storytelling is how we establish ourselves. You know, a piece of chicken with no story ends up on a $1 menu at KFC. But a piece of chicken with a story, I'd pay $200 to eat off a tasting menu. It's still just chicken. And so as a real estate agent, and even as a consultant, even me as a keynote speaker, author, we're a dime a dozen. So what we do is there's no patent monopolies in anything that we do. It's the story that makes us unique, and our ability to eloquently share that in a way that captures attention and gets people to act on it is where influence is truly created. And so we have to learn how to tell the story behind something. And people's understanding of story is also very limited. There's so many different ways of sharing story.
So when we talk about getting everything out there, we talk about frame, message, and tie down. Is in that framing? I mean, when we're talking about video, we talk about all this stuff. Everybody says, "Well, there's got to be a hook. You got to get people to see it." Is that more or less just social media, or is that in everything you're doing too, where you just want to get people to lean into you, right? And to do that, is that in where the frame is, and then get to the message, which might be the story?
Social media and is different than speaking, and the reason is it's captive versus non-captive audience. In a captive audience, they're not going to leave. You can start without a hook. You can enter what's in a cold start. You can enter through story. I remember when I was a kid, and people are there. They're captive. They're not going anywhere. But in a non-captive audience where they have a thumb and they have an endless supply of other options they can swipe you through, you need to hook them, and you have less than 3 seconds to do that. You need to be relevant to an audience that doesn't know you, doesn't care about what you do, and has no context. How can you stop that biology in that moment, that neurology, to get them to listen to you in less than 3 seconds? And it's a very different approach.
So, all right. So in less than 3 seconds. So we have to get our message across on whether it's, I know it's similar to what I just said, but we have to get our message across on the phone. We have to get our message across as we start speaking.
But we have to you won't get your message across that quickly. You have to give them a reason to stay on the phone.
Right. That's actually what I meant. You've got, how much time do you have? 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds? Or is it just, don't bother?
In social media, you have 3 seconds. On a cold call, you got a little bit more time, but the resistance is really high because it's an intrusive call, right? Social media is an intrusive. I'm choosing and electing to go out there. I didn't ask for the cold call. So now you have a little bit of time, but you have massive resistance. So it's a very different call. So to me, if I can do anything to warm up that call quickly, it's there, to say if I'm calling a realtor or whoever I'd be calling, the client saying, "Hey, I looked at your property. One excellent job on the landscaping. I think that's really going to help your process. The reason I'm calling is it seems like, if it's an expired listing, it seems like things didn't work out. I'm doing a little research here in our neighborhood because I really want to help our neighborhood grow. Can you tell me a little bit more about why that didn't work?" And so simple way of just when I'm complimenting something I found, I'd want to look at pictures, find something I truly did like. Don't make something up. Don't lie. Find a reason that you actually like this property, this person, or let's say you don't have a reason. You say, "Hey, I apologize for the intrusion. I saw that your listing didn't work out. I'm doing a little research in the neighborhood as in terms of what's working and what's not. If you don't mind, what happened? Why didn't that work out?" And I might just ask that real honest question. But the honesty and the sincerity is really what's going to help. And to me, if I'm a real estate agent and there's an expired listing, I'd want to find out why. I want to know my neighborhood. I want to be an expert. And experts get their fingers dirty. They get in, they find out what's going on, they research, they ask questions. So that's how I'd approach it.
I love all that. Please excuse the background noise if you hear it here. And timing is everything with the people outside working outside my home. But anyway, hey man, I want to thank you so much for being a part of Real Estate Talk TGIF. This is it's a love of mine that I'm going to keep going with, and to have great people like you on there that I learn from, and really my eyes are open to a lot of different things and understanding everything. You've got that masterclass we spoke of briefly. We have the link scrolling on the bottom, as well as your one-on-one coaching and your coaching, other coaching is there. If I said to you, René, if you wanted to help real estate agents get through their blocks, what would that be?
What kind of block are we talking about? Every block is different. There's sales reluctance blocks.
I know I got to make the calls, but they just don't make the calls. Turn the switch.
You know, if they're not making the phone calls, if you're not making the phone calls, you got to ask yourself what you really want. You know, are you hiding behind marketing as a cop-out to selling? Do you have any other sources of leads? And find out the people that are doing it, and you'll probably find out that they're making the phone calls. If you're not willing to do it, the honest question, you probably don't belong in the industry. You'll find a deal from time to time, for sure. It'll come across your lap, but you won't be all that successful versus the person who's done 10 deals to your one. They will have 10 more bits of experience compounding to your one. So you're making it harder for you to compete in the marketplace because you're just not getting that many looks, not many reps, not much practice. And so, you know, hey, if you don't want to make the phone calls, I'm going to wish you the best, but I can kind of already predict what's going to happen. And I heard a statistic the other day, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it was something like 74% or 84% of real estate agents in 2025 have not made a transaction yet in 2025.
Yes, 74. You're right. Absolutely
74.
Right.
That is absurd.
So
there's a lot of people that aren't making the phone calls.
Exactly. And there's a lot of competition out there, but there really isn't. René, I want to thank you so much. Just two real quick things. Well, actually three. One is the first question. The only question I have for you left is, how do I help you grow your business?
Just like everyone else, referrals are great. We love them.
Awesome. And next week, we have Russ Lagan coming on, who is the VP of Growth, speaker, trainer, also an author. Really great guy. You're going to love to hear from Russ. René, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And exactly, and like everyone else, you know, the hat's coming out. We will send you out a really nice hat.
I mean, I just came on here for the hat, so I was hoping to get it prior to this, but I'll take it afterwards.
Okay, so we'll make sure we get it to you really quickly. Hey, guys, thank you so much. I'm really honored. If you stay on just for a second as we go out, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Happy Halloween, by the way. Today is October 31st. Have a great weekend. Take care.
All right.